In the mists of Roman Britain, one of history's strangest vanishing acts took place. A seasoned legion, once feared across Europe, marched into the north and was never seen again. No final battle, no graves, no witnesses, just silence. The Ninth Legion disappeared from history with the weight of 5,000 souls behind it. Did they fall in battle, scatter into legend, or were they betrayed from within? Their fate remains unwritten, but not forgotten. In the early decades of the 1st century CE, the Roman Empire cast its formidable shadow over the British Isles. Among the legions that spearheaded this expansion was Legio IX Hispana, the Ninth Legion. Originally raised by Pompey in 65 BCE, this legion had already carved a distinguished path through the annals of Roman military history, participating in campaigns across Gaul, Spain, and Africa. Their reputation for discipline and effectiveness made them a natural choice for the challenging conquest of Britain. The invasion of Britain in 43 CE under Emperor Claudius marked a significant chapter in the legion's history. The Ninth played a crucial role in establishing Roman dominance, constructing forts, roads, and settlements that would serve as the backbone of Roman Britain. Their presence was not just military but also symbolic, representing the might and reach of Rome into the farthest corners of the known world. However, the British Isles were far from pacified. The native tribes, particularly in the northern regions, resisted Roman rule fiercely. The Ninth Legion found itself in constant conflict, facing guerrilla tactics and uprisings that tested their resilience. Despite these challenges, they maintained their posts, embodying the Roman ideals of order and civilization amidst the perceived barbarism of the frontier. The construction of Hadrian's Wall in the early 2nd century CE was a testament to the ongoing struggle to control the northern territories. While the Ninth's direct involvement in the wall's construction is debated, their role in securing the region was undeniable. They manned forts, patrolled the wild frontiers, and engaged in skirmishes that kept the northern tribes at bay. Yet despite their efforts, the Ninth Legion would eventually vanish from the historical record. Their disappearance remains one of the great mysteries of Roman history. Did they fall in battle? Were they disbanded? Or did they simply fade into obscurity? The answers are lost to time, but their legacy endures in the ruins they left behind, and the legends that continue to captivate historians and enthusiasts alike. The year was likely around 117 CE. Roman Britain had endured nearly 3/4 of a century of rebellion, occupation, and uneasy order, and then, somewhere in the mists of northern Britannia, an entire legion disappears. Not in the chaos of open warfare, not in the aftermath of some decisive final stand, but in the most haunting silence a military force could leave behind. No trace, no triumph, no record. Legio IX Hispana, once an elite Roman fighting force of roughly 5,000 men, vanishes from official documentation. Their name disappears from future inscriptions. No replacements are listed, no resupply orders remain. It is as if they walked off the page of history and into myth. The last confirmed mention of the Ninth Legion in Britain comes from a stone inscription in York, known in Roman times as Eboracum. It records the reconstruction of a fortress gate by the Ninth, sometime between 107 and 111 CE. After that, the written record falls silent. No documents from the legions stationed in Britannia mention them. They are absent from troop rosters under Emperor Hadrian. A force once stationed at the heart of Rome's northern frontier is simply gone. What happened? Historians have debated this question for centuries. One of the most compelling theories suggests that the Ninth marched north into Caledonia, what is now Scotland, to quell a tribal uprising and never returned. At the time, the northern tribes were far from subdued. The Caledonians, Maetai, and other confederated clans were known for their fierce independence and guerrilla warfare. Unlike the structured legions of Rome, these warriors used terrain, ambush, and mobility as their greatest strengths. It is entirely plausible that the Ninth, isolated deep in enemy territory, was surrounded and annihilated. This theory is bolstered by archaeological finds. In areas once considered the tribal borderlands, scattered Roman artifacts have surfaced, fragments of armor, broken weapons, and makeshift grave sites inconsistent with typical Roman military burial customs. Some researchers interpret these as evidence of a lost campaign, one never chronicled in Roman records because of its disastrous outcome. To record such a defeat, particularly in the outer provinces, may have been considered both politically damaging and dishonorable. In Roman eyes, a legion did not simply vanish, better perhaps for its fate to go unspoken. Yet not all scholars agree with this northern theory. Some argue that the Ninth did not perish in Britain at all, but was instead transferred to another part of the empire. A military diploma from 122 CE referencing Legio IX in the Netherlands has been debated extensively. If authentic, it suggests the legion may have been redeployed to the continent. Another inscription, found in Nijmegen, speaks vaguely of a Roman force that may have included remnants of the Ninth. Could they have left Britain quietly absorbed into another theatre of war? And yet, if they were simply moved, why does their name not reappear in the major conflicts that followed? The Roman Empire was still waging wars in the east, along the Danube, and in the deserts of Arabia. Legion names, even those that suffered losses, often carried on. The 10th Mounted Legion survived the destruction of its sister unit in Judea. Other legions were reformed, renamed, or merged. The 9th simply disappears, not restructured, not replaced, gone. Another, more conspiratorial theory suggests that the 9th was not destroyed by foreign enemies, but by internal treachery. The volatile politics of Rome, combined with unrest in the provinces, created an atmosphere where betrayal was not uncommon. Some propose that the 9th may have revolted or mutinied and was quietly disbanded. Executions or forced reassignment could have erased their identity. It would explain the absence of battlefield evidence and the silence in Roman administrative records. But again, there are no surviving reports of such a mutiny. No letters, no decrees, not even a whisper in the Senate records. The disappearance also sparked modern fascination. Rosemary Sutcliffe's 1954 novel, The Eagle of the Ninth, romanticized the theory of a doomed expedition into Scotland. The novel's vision of a young centurion recovering the legion's lost eagle became an enduring narrative in fiction, film, and even military legend. The idea that 5,000 disciplined soldiers could vanish into the highlands, swallowed by mist and myth, has captivated imaginations far beyond academia. But what makes the disappearance of the Ninth so haunting is not just its historical uncertainty, it's the silence that follows it. Rome, so thorough in its administration and prideful in its military record-keeping, leaves behind nothing of the Ninth's end. No names of fallen officers, no honorific monuments, no recriminations or eulogies. It is an absence so vast it demands explanation. Whether their fate was battle, reassignment, disbandment, or something stranger still, the vanishing of the Ninth stands as one of the greatest historical black holes of the classical world. By the early 2nd century CE, Roman Britain was a land teetering between conquest and chaos. The southern regions, adorned with Roman villas and bustling towns, stood in stark contrast to the untamed north, where the empire's grasp was tenuous at best. The 9th Legion had long been the bulwark against the northern tribes, but their mysterious disappearance left a void that threatened the stability of the entire province. The northern frontier was a volatile region. Tribes such as the Brigantes, Caledonians, and Maeatai resisted Roman rule with relentless fervor. Their knowledge of the rugged terrain and guerrilla tactics posed significant challenges to the Roman military, which was accustomed to open field battles. The 9th Legion had faced these adversaries for decades, but their sudden absence raised pressing questions. Had they been ambushed and annihilated? Had they mutinied and vanished into the wilderness? Emperor Hadrian's ascension in 117 CE marked a pivotal shift in Roman policy. Departing from the expansionist ambitions of his predecessors, Hadrian adopted a strategy of consolidation. Recognizing the futility of extending the empire's reach into hostile territories, he sought to fortify existing borders. This pragmatic approach was epitomized by the construction of Hadrian's Wall, a formidable barrier stretching approximately 80 miles across northern Britain. Hadrian's Wall was more than a physical structure. It was a symbol of Rome's intent to define and defend its boundaries. The wall featured forts, watchtowers and gates, serving both as a military defense and a means to control trade and movement. Its presence underscored the empire's recognition of the persistent threats from the north and its commitment to maintaining order within its provinces. The disappearance of the Ninth Legion likely influenced Hadrian's decision to construct the wall. The loss of an entire legion would have been a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beyond the empire's frontiers. By establishing a clear demarcation, Hadrian aimed to prevent further incursions and stabilize the region. The wall also served as a psychological deterrent, projecting Roman strength and resolve to both allies and adversaries. Despite these efforts, the northern tribes remained a formidable force. Their resistance persisted, and the wall, while effective in many respects, could not entirely quell the unrest. The Roman military continued to engage in skirmishes and campaigns to suppress uprisings and maintain control. The challenges of governing such a fractious region underscored the complexities of imperial rule and the limitations of military might. The fate of the Ninth Legion remains one of history's enduring mysteries. Whether they met their end in battle, were disbanded, or simply faded into obscurity, their story is emblematic of the broader struggles faced by the Roman Empire in maintaining its vast territories. The construction of Hadrian's Wall stands as a testament to the empire's adaptive strategies in the face of adversity and its relentless pursuit of order amidst chaos. History, when it forgets, tends to whisper instead of speak, and few events are whispered about more than the disappearance of Rome's Ninth Legion. After their last confirmed mention in Eboracum, the legion vanishes like a blade sunk into water, no ripple, no cry. What remains are echoes, theories, and the tantalizing silence between them. One of the oldest and most enduring theories is annihilation, that the Ninth, a full-strength legion of around 5,000 men, marched north into Caledonian territory and met their end in a catastrophic ambush. This theory has captivated historians for generations. Its appeal is in its drama, the image of disciplined Roman soldiers, isolated deep in enemy terrain, overwhelmed by a sudden and merciless assault. For Rome, the northern frontier was never truly conquered. The tribes that lived in what is now Scotland were fiercely autonomous, and the dense forests and moors made ideal terrain for guerrilla warfare. Supporters of this theory point to the construction of Hadrian's Wall, just a few years after the Ninth disappears from the record. Why build such a vast and permanent barrier unless something terrible had happened? The loss of a legion would have been a humiliation to the empire, especially in a distant and problematic province. Such a failure might not be recorded at all, either out of shame or political discretion. Some argue that silence was a strategy, a refusal to immortalize a defeat in ink. But if the Ninth had been destroyed in battle, where are the remains? No mass graves have been found, no scorched ruins of a battlefield. The north has yielded Roman artifacts, but nothing definitively tied to a full legion's destruction. If it was a massacre, it was one buried not only by soil, but by time and perhaps deliberate omission. Another possibility is that the Ninth was not destroyed, but moved. Some scholars believe that the legion was quietly redeployed to another front in the empire, possibly to the Rhine or even the eastern provinces. There is a possible, though heavily debated inscription in Nijmegen, modern-day Netherlands, that references the Ninth Legion around the same period. It's sparse, inconclusive, and perhaps misattributed, but tantalizing. If the Ninth was relocated, it may have suffered its fate far from Britain. Under this theory, its disappearance from British records is not mysterious at all. It simply left. But here too, the record is incomplete. No solid documentation places the legion at any known battles in Dacia, Parthia, or along the Danube. Other legions that were transferred are well documented. The Ninth, by contrast, fades without a trace. If it was reassigned, why does it vanish entirely from subsequent records? Why is there no list of its campaigns, no names of its commanders, no veteran settlements in its name? A darker theory suggests internal collapse, that the Ninth may have mutinied. During periods of unrest or harsh conditions, legions sometimes turned on their commanders. Mutiny was not unheard of in the Roman military, and it was met with brutal, often erasing consequences. If the Ninth rebelled, the empire may have disbanded the unit and suppressed all reference to its fate. It would have been easier to pretend they never existed than to immortalize their betrayal. the execution of rebellious officers, the reassignment of loyal survivors to other units, and the burning of records, all were within Rome's capability. There is even a suggestion that the legion may have been politically cleansed. During shifts in imperial power, legions were sometimes purged of political loyalties. If the Ninth supported the wrong faction during a succession crisis, it could have been erased administratively, its soldiers scattered, its banner retired. The early 2nd century was a volatile period. The transition from Trajan to Hadrian marked a change in imperial strategy and loyalty. Perhaps the Ninth was on the wrong side of that change. Then there are the romantic theories, less grounded in evidence but powerful in their narrative pull. That the legion defected, blending into the northern tribes, disappearing not by death but by assimilation. That they founded their own hidden community, Roman in structure but native in spirit, somewhere deep in the Scottish Highlands. It is a theory that appeals to the imagination, but one that leaves little in the way of proof. No Roman-style settlements have been found in northern Scotland that suggest such a migration. Still, the idea lingers. More recently, some have questioned whether the Ninth's disappearance is a mystery at all. They argue that its fading was gradual, administrative, rather than dramatic. That over time, as new legions arrived and strategies shifted, the Ninth was absorbed into other units, or phased out due to attrition. A legion did not need to be destroyed to disappear. It only had to be forgotten by those who wrote the records. But this explanation, while reasonable, feels too clean. The absence of any formal record of decommissioning, and the precision with which Roman bureaucrats usually noted such things, makes the silence surrounding the Ninth suspicious in itself. Even if they were phased out, why so completely? The disappearance of the Ninth Legion sits at a peculiar crossroads, between history and folklore, between logic and legend. The further we chase their trail, the more it fractures into speculation. Perhaps that is why it endures. The Ninth is no longer just a Roman military unit. It is a symbol of what happens when power meets resistance, when history loses its pen, and when the fog of time swallows men whole. And in that silence, in the absence of certainty, the legend only grows. If the disappearance of the Ninth Legion was a wound to the pride of Rome, then Hadrian's wall was the scar it left behind. Few structures in the ancient world carry the psychological weight of this massive barrier, a physical declaration that marked the edge not just of empire, but of understanding. In its stone and turf were embedded the anxieties of imperial power, the defiance of distant tribes, and the silent memory of a legion that had, only years before, vanished into the mists of the north. When Hadrian assumed the throne in 117 CE, the empire stood at its greatest territorial extent. But along its fringes, the cost of expansion was becoming unsustainable. Britain, long a symbol of Roman ambition, had proved especially problematic. Revolts were frequent. Tribal alliances in the north refused to yield. And somewhere amid that unstable terrain, the Ninth Legion had ceased to exist. Whether wiped out in battle, dissolved through reorganization, or erased in disgrace, their absence was more than a logistical gap. It was a statement, a warning. And Hadrian, pragmatic and cautious, understood its implications. Soon after his visit to Britain in 122 CE, construction of the wall began. It would stretch for roughly 80 Roman miles from coast to coast, cutting across the narrow neck of the island like a blade. Its purpose was not purely defensive. Rome, after all, had no intention of cowering behind stone. Rather, it was a controlled threshold, a fortified line that filtered people, goods, and intentions. It projected stability, even if what lay beyond it was chaos. And in that projection, it served its most important role: the assertion that the empire, though tested, remained unbroken. Hadrian's wall was a marvel of imperial logistics, built by the very legions that would later man it, including the 6th and the 20th. Its construction fused Roman military efficiency with architectural symbolism. The eastern sections were crafted from stone, solid and enduring. The western portions, built of turf, adapted to the terrain but were no less formidable. At regular intervals stood mile castles and turrets, checkpoints that allowed constant patrol and surveillance. Behind it ran the vallum, a massive ditch flanked by mounds, ensuring that movement was not only difficult for enemies but easily regulated by Rome. What made the wall remarkable, however, was not merely its structure, but what it represented in Rome's evolving strategy. The empire had long defined itself by expansion. Conquest was not just military, it was philosophical. It was the duty of Rome, it believed, to bring order, language, and civilization to the untamed. But the wall marked a departure from that narrative. It was not about bringing Britannia to heel, it was about holding a line. The message was subtle but profound. The empire had grown too large to conquer everything. Some places were best kept at bay. Though Hadrian never publicly acknowledged the connection, the timing is difficult to ignore. The Ninth Legion's absence from the record is followed almost immediately by the wall's creation. Whether it was built in direct response to their fate or as a broader policy shift, the implication was clear. Whatever Rome could not dominate through sheer force, it would now contain. If Rome could not civilize the north, it would enclose it, and those behind the wall would be watched, taxed, and warned, but not trusted. In the decades that followed, the wall became more than a frontier. It was a social and economic artery. Traders moved goods through its gates. Diplomats, messengers, and even spies crossed at sanctioned points. Native Britons, some allied with Rome, lived and worked near its length, creating a curious blending of Roman and indigenous life. Forts blossomed into settlements, Latin mixed with native tongues, and among the stones a strange peace took hold, not the peace of victory, but of endurance. Still, the memory of the Ninth lingered. Soldiers stationed at the wall inherited their silence. Recruits heard rumors in the barracks, of thousands lost in the forests beyond, of ghost formations that still marched in the mist. Officers read old reports, careful not to ask questions the empire had chosen to forget. It is possible that some of the very men who built the wall once marched under the Ninth Siegel. Veterans reassigned from a vanished unit, laying stone where their comrades had disappeared. Hadrian's wall outlasted the empire that built it. Long after Roman rule receded from Britain, the wall remained, a weathered relic of control in a land that never truly accepted it. In time, it was plundered for stone, bypassed by roads, and forgotten by kings. But its symbolism endured. It remains one of the most visible traces of Rome's presence in Britain, and one of the most enduring reminders of what the empire could not conquer. If the Ninth Legion was erased to protect the myth of Roman invincibility, then Hadrian's wall is its monument, not in glory, but in caution, not a triumph, but a boundary. The empire did not fall all at once. It faltered at the edges where the land pushed back harder than anticipated. And sometimes in those edges, entire legions were lost, not just in body, but in name, in record, in memory. And in the long silence that followed, Rome built a wall. The Ninth Legion vanished into the fog of time, not with a scream, but with a silence so complete it continues to echo across millennia. No last orders were recorded, no battlefield was sanctified, no bodies were laid to rest beneath inscribed stone. Yet in their absence, the Ninth left behind something far more enduring than columns or conquest. They left a question. And sometimes a question is more powerful than an answer. Rome was not a civilization that easily forgot. It remembered its victories in marble and its betrayals in fire. But with the Ninth, it looked away. Whether they were destroyed in the highlands, dissolved in disgrace, or simply consumed by the quiet mechanics of empire, the result is the same. A hole in the record that refuses to be filled. And it is in that hole that legends have taken root. Perhaps they were never meant to be remembered clearly. Perhaps their legacy is not in what they did, but in what we continue to do in their name: search, imagine, question. And so long as that search continues, the Ninth is not lost. They are still out there, somewhere between history and myth, marching eternally into the unknown.